It's
Ooh,
quite
welcome.
the picture.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Quite the picture indeed. Welcome one, welcome all to another developer interview here on the Xbox Expansion Pass. Today, I am joined by Mathieu Côté, game director for Dead by Daylight, head of partnerships at Behaviour Interactive. I'm your host, Luke Lore, the Insipid Ghost. Matthew, thank you for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm excited to have you here. I have a bevy of questions. The community, of course, on socials was very excited by your presence in another interview. I would very much like to start by noting that Dead by Daylight at this point in its career is remarkable success. We're on the start of the Haunted by Daylight
Yep.
event, 8 years strong in Dead by Daylight. When you started with DBD, did you ever think it would make it this far?
Yes, of course. I was certain of it. No, that's completely ridiculous. I mean, we were, even as a studio, we were mostly a studio doing games for other people, right?
Hmm.
Behavior has been doing that for 30 years now.
Hmm.
Uh, and this was just a fun project that we were able to do sort of in between other work. And honestly, we were hoping to break even. That was
Hmm.
sort of our hope, right? And
Hmm.
we were like, okay, if everything goes well, people will enjoy it, some people will play, we'll make our money back, and then we can move on to going back to doing work for other people, because that's what we
Hmm.
were doing. That's not what happened.
Hmm.
uh, there was an explosion, everybody went crazy, the team blew up, the company actually grew to an incredible size compared to what it was back then. And today there's 350 people working on Dead by Daylight pretty much every day, right?
I'm curious now, how many people started? You said 300 some odd people now. What was it like in the
So
beginning?
just to give you an idea, when I was working at Behaviour, working on Dead by Daylight at the very beginning. So that was me and Ash Pennell, who was the creative director at the time. That we were
Mhm,
the first two on the project. Behaviour as a company was about 300 to 325 people. And most of the Dead by Daylight development was done with, I'd say, about 20-25 people.
mhm,
Took about 18 months. And by
mhm,
the time we shipped, maybe there were 35 people, maybe a couple more.
mhm,
Just a little push to get to the end.
mhm,
So yeah, that was about it. 30-35 people, sort of at the peak.
mhm. When you initially envisioned it compared to where we are now, you're head of partnerships. You work with licenses. Did you initially think it would be a game that featured licenses?
I mean, it was part of, I wouldn't say the plan, but let's say the ambition, right?
Mhm,
We knew what our we knew what a chapter could be.
mhm,
We thought, if this works and people want more, we know what kind of delivery method we're going to use with the chapter, adding more maps, adding more survivors, and adding more killers. And so that sort of naturally lent itself very well to the introduction of potentially different universes and different characters.
mhm,
Uh, and because of Behavior, because of what we were, and what we are as a company, we already had tons of existing contacts with people, licensors, people in Hollywood, in the industry. I mean, as a general rule, the video game and the movie industry have always been very, very close. Right?
mhm,
There's a lot of overlap in many different expertise and disciplines. And because we were working for licensors for the most part, like doing games for, I don't know, Disney as an example, we already had a few contacts in and around, and so it was not easy, but easier certainly to reach out and to find the right people to start those conversations.
mhm. The those conversations led to pretty big moment when the Halloween franchise Michael Myers arrived. I wonder if you could reflect on that for a bit.
It was a little surreal, honestly. uh it's one of those key moments in those almost that decade of Dead by Daylight, right? I think that it was one of the key moments where we felt a first layer of legitimacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It made us feel like we were able to stand proudly next to the other. Like immediately, it's funny because like on the first week of Dead by Daylight, you look at Twitch, and we were like between Overwatch and CS:GO, and we're like, that makes no sense, right? It
Mm-hmm.
no sense that this little game that we put together would be in the top 10 of Twitch, and in between those gigantic behemoths of the video game world, and we were right there, and we sort of stayed there. And so through that decade of development, there are a few key moments where we started to feel like, yeah, we deserve our spot there, and people recognize it, which is great. One of the other moments was when we did Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Had a I mean, it wasn't the first video game collaboration we did because we had Left 4 Dead much earlier on, but that was the big, right? That was the first time that a horror video game legend
Mm-hmm.
telling us, yes, our characters will
Mm-hmm.
be well within your world that you created, and we're happy to do this.
Mm-hmm.
That was an incredible validation.
You know, you mentioned Silent Hill, and I'm going to skip ahead to one of my other questions. Given that Silent Hill just had its Silent Hill 2 remake just come out, critical
Yeah.
acclaim and such, do you guys feel an impact on that when you have a license or a character that's releasing new content and they can call back to Dead by Daylight?
I mean, it's certainly a lot of fun, and
Mm-hmm.
it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like precise KPIs or things that a spike in sales or something, it's rare that it's so easy to create a link between these two. There's so many factors
Mm-hmm.
that come in. There's a couple of exceptions here and there where you see like, oh, but it's usually when we announce things that are present in the game. We've done a
Mm-hmm.
couple of external collaborations, like in For Honor or Rainbow Six, where our characters have appeared in their game, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can have an impact. But the biggest thing is when something happens in Dead by Daylight.
Right. Well, you know, that's an interesting element. We often think of Dead by Daylight, I know as a player, of characters coming to DBD,
Yeah.
whereas seeing Trapper in a Call of Duty or a Fortnite or anywhere, a For Honor or something, I don't often think about it in that direction. Is that something you guys have ever pursued?
We've done it a little bit. Like I
Mm-hmm.
named For Honor, I named
Mm-hmm.
Rainbow Six. There's a couple of other places where our characters have, and it's oftentimes it's not our characters as much as it's sort of they borrow some of our world,
Mm-hmm.
and then they integrate it mostly as gameplay or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we haven't done much of that, to be honest, and I'm not sure why, honestly. Like there are opportunities out there that are interesting,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, I don't know why we don't do more of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple on my list that I would really like to do. Maybe one of the reasons is I mean, already the fact that we integrate so many licenses into the world of Dead by Daylight
Mm-hmm.
means that we are constantly sort of monitoring the levels, like when you're mixing a cocktail, right? And we want to make sure that we don't dilute Dead by Daylight, and that
Mm-hmm.
it because it needs to Dead by Daylight needs to stay a world where other people come in and they are
Mm-hmm.
integrated into our world, and when you look at it, it is still very much unmistakably Dead by Daylight. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about the other licenses, but they are welcome and they fit perfectly, but they are coming into our world. When
Mm-hmm.
we bring them in, it is the Dead by Daylight version of those characters, of those worlds
Mm-hmm.
that is presented.
Right. I think about it's easy because Dead by Daylight's a live service, and Fortnite, Call of Duty, some of these other games are live service. And
Yep.
then we've seen horror icons show up there, right? Michael
Yep.
Myers in the most recent COD pass and was in Fortnite a year ago. And I have to wonder, like, if I saw I don't know, the hag or the trapper out there, what that would look like, and how much would it be their game versus a Dead by Daylight license, you know?
And that's always the question, and
Mhm,
we are in the position to sort of deal with that on a daily basis, because
mhm,
when you talk to the people that own Chucky, for instance, and
mhm,
they say, I want you to represent my character in a way that makes sense for my character, and we have to
mhm,
respect our rules and our aesthetic and all of this,
mhm,
but we also have to make sure that we sort of present it respectfully, but also in a way that is true to the source material. And
mhm,
therefore, like, i I mean, they are extremely talented and I trust they'd be able to do it, but I have
mhm.
a hard time imagining what the hag would look like in Fortnite, right?
Right,
Like flossing and doing whatever. Like,
right.
I don't know what that would look like, and I don't know that I'd be super comfortable with it. That being said, it's Fortnite, so very likely we'd find a way, right?
Right. Right. It does feel like that the horror genre is opening itself up, and perhaps this is more the uh, film and TV industry that kind of is behind horror, is allowing those characters to do more of that as we see them show up in more places. Do you? Because you have your
I
finger on
don't
that pulse.
I don't
Disagree?
know.
Agree?
I feel like it's it's weird. Horror is like the biggest niche out there. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a small thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's never been mainstream. But also the fans and the community that sort of gather around that, they sort of take pride in the fact that it's not for everyone, right?
Mm,
And so I think that it's sort of, it needs to stay sort of second fiddle to a certain extent,
mm-hmm.
because it's part of its definition, it's part of what makes it special.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's big, like it's prevalent, it's everywhere. The, like, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, these are even like through generations, universally, these things are known, these things are recognized. And to a certain extent, through Dead by Daylight, we've seen this quite a lot, because we have fans in so many regions around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not familiar with a movie that came out because it's very North American, or even because it's very Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
they are universal themes. You
Mm-hmm.
will immediately understand why that character should be creepy, or why you should be feeling uncomfortable by the themes that are presented or by the imagery. And that's part of the appeal, I think, is the fact that it touches on something that's very, very human. Like, comedy and humor is a great way to gather people, but it's extremely regional. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
I find funny doesn't necessarily translate well, even from one language to another, or from
Mm-hmm.
one region to another, or from one culture to another, right? If
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the same references, it doesn't really work. But
Mm-hmm.
horror tends to translate really, really well throughout the world, because they tend to be very universal, like something visceral and human that's everywhere.
Right. It is interesting though to me. So I kind of delved back into the world of DBD a few months ago, and having been out for a bit, I was caught off guard and pleasantly surprised by, I guess, the regional horror elements, because I was back in there. I had
Mhm.
the known elements, the Kruger, the Leatherface, reacquainted with Trapper and such. But then there were, the Oni and so many Japanese horror icons there.
Yeah.
And as I went down the rabbit hole, I was learning about, leaks and speculation and so many, content creators, what is it, the Grudge, is it this, is it that? And I was like, there's a whole realm of horror that even I had not realized was there. And I've
Absolutely.
fallen in love. I've fallen in love with
Wonderful.
it.
That makes me so happy to hear that. And it's great, because it's true. We do try to gather from here and there as much as possible. There's so many different regions, so many interesting ways that people have been presenting horror, or what scares them, or just what they're curious about sometimes.
Mhm,
And, like, there are very few themes or specific things that we sort of keep at bay. The rest is sort of, yeah, sure, bring it on, we'll see.
mhm,
And it's been, even for us, it's been a great exercise in sort of embracing our curiosity also, right?
Yeah.
The same way you've discovered things, we discover some every day, right? It's really cool.
That implies that you guys are, maybe I'm overlooking, so walk me back if you need to,
Oh,
but
please
maybe
go
like
nuts.
examining what's that?
I said, oh, please go nuts.
Well, the idea of different cultures having different urban legends or fear icons,
Yes.
are you investigating maybe horror that's not necessarily worldwide renowned, popular, but delving into like cultural myths? Have you guys like been examining those?
Absolutely. I think that the probably, at least my favorite example of that is the Huntress.
Mm-hmm.
The Huntress, very, very inspired in like even just the fabrics that were used, the lullaby, all of these things, very Eastern European, like Ukraine, Russia, like early 1900s, things like that. And that's very, very specific. Yet that character is instantly recognizable now. It's got a strong silhouette. It's sort of threatening and intimidating for anybody, no matter where you're from. But for some of our players that are from these regions, it touched something very, very personal, because that lullaby, for instance, is something that their mother sang to them when they were a kid, right? It comes to something very, very profound and personal. And so this to me is a great example of the value of going and sort of digging under people's beds to see what sort of boogeyman lives there, because you will find it interesting even though you are unfamiliar with everything that has to do with that culture or those urban legends or the mythology or folklore that exists. But then undeniably you will find it interesting, and you might it might make you want to go and watch a few weird Ukrainian horror movies that you would never have even thought of considering, but it might open a new door for you. It's the same when we did The Trickster, right? Inspired by the whole K-pop culture, which is something that not everybody's familiar with, but that had some really interesting themes and visuals that we could play in. And then we did like The Spirit, which is very Japanese, and all of these things really allow us to go and dig. And so when you're talking about the future, of course, there are so many cultures we haven't touched on, so many really interesting little tidbits that we're willing to integrate into these things. There is literally no limit to the number of, specifically the original chapters, right? It's just, and then sometimes it's just something super easy and obvious, like a clown. Oh yeah, let's do a clown. Like we're missing a clown right now, which is, I mean, I think every culture probably has clowns or a variation of the theme, right? And everybody thinks they're creepy, so it's perfect.
We I'm a middle school teacher by day, and we've been studying
I heard.
Oh yeah, nice. That's very cool.
I studied to be a teacher actually before I went into video game.
Really? Oh, that makes me makes me really happy actually. But we've been studying like Edgar Allan Poe currently, and the in doing that we dive into like what scares people and what they fear, loss, the unknown, that kind of element, and the twisting of something that's meant to be very happy, like a clown or a
Of
joyous figure,
course.
that perversion into madness has been a very interesting element. And when I saw the Haunted by Daylight clown outfit, I just got overjoyed. That looked cool.
But and you touch upon something that I find extremely important to Dead by Daylight, and it's sort of the theme of the. There's two things. There's the juxtaposition of the familiar with something that's slightly off about it, right? One of the things that we often talk about is like the maps, the way the maps are created, oftentimes, and that's how we present it to licensors often, because we recreate things that exist but they're not exactly the same, and we're like, it's like that nightmare, right? You go to the house that you grew up in and you recognize everything, it's familiar, but then you open that door that used to be a cupboard and now there's a staircase that goes down to a terrible place with meat hooks. It's familiar and yet it's not, and that's even in the design and the gameplay with the procedural generation, because you've played the game 1,000 hours, you know those maps by heart, but every once in a while you're like, you turn a corner and you're like, oh shit, I thought there was going to be a way here, but there's not, right? And so that element of familiar yet uncertainty the sort of tension that's built out of that is, I believe, one of the reasons why this game continues to be relevant to this day. And the other bit that I really, really enjoy is that sort of the uncertainty, right? You don't know who you're going to be matched with. You don't know who you're going to go up against. You don't even know who the other survivors are at the time. You know, you may be playing with your friends, but there's one guy in there, you don't know that guy, and you save him, and then you're on the hook, and he just walks by, and you're like, oh, dude, and that's it. That's also part of the sort of magic of Dead by Daylight, I think.
It's very much horror.
Yeah.
I have had survivors point to me when I'm hiding, and they're like, there he is, and the killer's just like, well, I'm gonna go get him instead. And it's like, wait a minute, that's true horror at its finest.
And the best moments for me are when the survivors are actually angry at other survivers. Like, that's the best moment. That's the strongest reactions that we get. I think also when we did Saw, the pig, I think that was the strongest peak of that for me, because you have the bear trap on your head, and then all of a sudden I open the gate, and then the timer starts, and you're like, dude, you just screwed me so bad with this. And it was really, really fun. And that was also extremely core to the Saw franchise, right? That's the whole point. So yeah, that's super fun.
It's the absolute best. I tell a story often where, as I kind of got back into Dead by Daylight, I was just enjoying learning the killers, the survivors, and a true horror moment for me. I'm repairing a generator or whatnot. There's this weird audio chime. I wasn't sure what it was, and I look up, and quite literally across the map, there's Ghostface just staring at me, not moving towards me, just watching. And I was like, oh, wow. And I think I audibly sat up in my seat and gasped. And I was like, oh, just bad news bears.
It's very funny, because I had there's a moment for me that will stay with me forever. And that's when I understood that Dave Richard, who's our creative director on Dead by Daylight, is an absolute genius. And it was while we were developing Michael Myers. And he's like, I got an idea. Okay, we'll try it out. I'm like, okay. And I play as a survivor. I rarely play as survivor. I used to play killer all the time because I'm a wuss and I don't want to be scared. So I'm playing as a survivor, and I'm repairing a gen. And then I turn and I see Michael Myers, and he's just staring at me.
Right? Yes.
And I'm like, okay, well, okay, what do I do now? Like, and I was like, do I stay here and keep doing? Like, why is he like, stop it? And it was really an intense reaction, and I loved it. And I'm like, you created a character in a super competitive, like a game where someone is chasing another, and the whole point of the character is to stay there and do nothing, and it works so well. All right, dude, I'm never gonna doubt you again.
Yeah, that's that stalking element. That truly is
so
why.
Good.
Yeah, that is my favorite killer of the licensed ones, just for that
Michael?
very reason. Yeah, Michael. Just
and it is such a great way to present the character, especially because it was based off of the original movies from 1974. Which, if you rewatch it today, I mean, to today's eyes, it is a little slow paced. It is much more about sort of the buildup of the tension and the anticipation of what violence could be. For like an hour, you're just watching a guy sort of peeking through the hedges and looking over his shoulder, and oh no, he's not there anymore. And like, that's it, right? And that was what we managed to recreate in Dead by Daylight, and I was so very proud.
It's such a unique element compared to so many other horror experiences, and there are many games that have done it very well that stand out in people's minds, from the Silent Hills to the PTs to every other more modern variation Supermassive's work. But there is something unique about having a killer stalk you and knowing that it's a person who could make choices, and these survivors might betray you, might help you. Yeah. Sir, go ahead, please.
No. It's just because my dog is here poking me. I think she's hungry now. I barely feed her ever, so
I'm sure not enough pets. There we go. Too cute. I love it. Too cute.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We started talking about several franchises and licenses apart from the original characters. Has there ever been a license for you that was on the right track? On the right track. Yes, we're good, and then fell apart last second.
Yes.
What does that feel like?
But I can't. Like these things are highly confidential, of
Mhm.
course, and if I didn't get it, then it means that I might still, right? It
Right.
exists. It's possible.
Mhm.
So it's very difficult to go into specifics on this, but negotiating and chasing down licenses.
Mhm.
I mean, I enjoy it, or else I wouldn't have decided to dedicate such a big part of what I do every day to that.
Sure.
But it is tense, and it is stressful, and it can be nerve-wracking sometimes because you want it, right? uh
Mhm.
I'm a fan, and that's one of the reasons why I do this, is because I still find quite a lot of pleasure in doing this, and I want Dead by Daylight to continue to surprise people and to really, like, I like to talk about Dead by Daylight as the museum of horror, the Hall of
Mhm.
Fame of horror, and how we we use our gameplay mechanics and our universe to sort of paint a
Mhm.
version of these characters and of these universes, and it's a love letter to horror. So
Mhm.
being able to feature all of my favorite characters, all of my favorite authors, or you know universes that were created, is something that's very dear to my heart, and being able to push in unexpected directions also, like we did with Iron Maiden and Slipknot right this
Mhm.
year, or even Nick Cage, right?
Mhm.
it's 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 a privilege. I'm very, very happy to be able to do this.
I'm curious if in your pursuit of licenses and such, you've ever had moments where you've had a chance to meet people that you idolized or heroes or of sorts. Did you ever get those
a,
moments?
a couple of times. Bruce Campbell was something. I mean,
Mhm.
it's Bruce Campbell, right?
Right.
It's just yeah.
Mhm.
He's an absolute legend in the world of horror. He was great. He was extremely generous with his time, and the result that we got out of it was really, really cool. It was really
Mhm.
nice to have him come into the game. Uh,
Mhm.
and being able to sit there and witness Nick Cage
Mhm.
record VOs for all of this, for a character, for the promo stuff and everything, is, I mean, I'll keep that with me forever. Like that.
Mhm.
One of the reasons we picked him is because he is bigger than life, right?
Mhm.
He is a real person, but he is a character. It's
Right.
it's, it's Nick Cage, right? It's
Right.
just
Yes.
so. And when he came and he did the voiceover recording, he was a consummate professional. He's one of the hardest working actors out there, and he gave everything he had in that recording session, and it shows. We have some really good stuff. The saddest bit is that there's so much cool things that ended up on the cutting room floor, because we cannot have 4 hours of cool lines from Nick Cage in the game. We already
Mhm.
put, I think he's probably one of the characters with the most voice lines and different audio bits that come out. But still, like, there's some insane stuff that came out of his mouth that we weren't
Mhm.
able to use in the end. But all of these things, it's just awesome to be able to do that. Uh,
Mhm.
I could talk about this for hours. I don't mean to go on forever,
I'm
but
in.
like, talking to the people at Kadokawa, the representatives for Sadako and the Ring. I mean,
Mhm.
that also is quite an impressive franchise that they
Mhm.
created over the years, and we were lucky enough to talk to the actual creator and
Mhm.
talk to them about the fact that we were hoping for a survivor, for instance, right? And they're like,
Mhm.
well, the only person that ever survived through all of the content that we've ever created is a little boy. That's it.
Mhm.
There's one little boy that survives, and that everybody else dies.
Mhm.
Or like, well, we don't put children in the game. That's one of the rules that we haven't broken. Well, that's not true. We don't kill children.
Mm.
Children who kill, that's absolutely fine.
Oh yeah, totally different.
But we don't kill children. But they're like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe there's ways. And we talked to them, and we ended up being able to create that character all grown up, which
Mm-hmm.
is what we ended up doing. And we
Mm-hmm.
created him and his backstory and all of this in collaboration with them. And they told us, they're like, this was wonderful, and this character is now canon to our universe, and that's great. And you created something, and that was, again, it's just one of those moments when you're like, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to these people. Same when we work on Silent Hill or Resident Evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to the creators of something that is such a legend in the world of video games. And we're working with them, and they're saying, what you did with our property is something that we're very proud of, and thank you very much for treating it the way you did. Like, how much prouder can you be of the people you work with? It's crazy.
It's truly the museum of horror because, as a kid, Resident Evil and Silent Hill were rivals and such, and now I think the gaming industry is learning that joint ventures like rising tides tend to lift more boats.
But the thing is, yes, but there are so few places in the world where these things can be mixed together in a way that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we are very lucky to have created a universe where that works, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are not that many places where you can have Nemesis from Resident Evil chasing down Ash Williams in the house that Michael Myers grew up in.
That's my favorite part.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even I was talking to someone else who's doing an interview, I think this week, and like you have very few games that have that level of crossover rectitude. That's probably a word now, but like the Mortal Kombat, Super Smash Bros, multiverses, like there's a couple of them, but they tend to be very light on the narrative side, right? It's mostly, she's upset. Sorry about that. But like it's usually like people beating each other, and that's pretty much it. And there's not that much narrative. But in Dead by Daylight, there's quite a lot of narrative and lore and why they're there and how they interact with each other. And yet it's one of the places where it works the best, and it's kind of mind-blowing.
It's very cool. I played a horror game recently where in similar fashion to The Entity, you had to have a surreal reason, something unique and special to mix and match characters.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that it's done successfully, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's the timeline then from when you get the yes to use a character to when they show up in the game?
The shortest I'd say that can be done is probably around a year. But oftentimes it's longer than that. Let's say 18 months is comfortable from the moment we say, okay, let's do this, to the moment when we are ready to release. Then there's a bunch of other factors that can come in, whether like, oh yeah, but we have a new movie coming out 6 months later, maybe we push it a little bit and then we shuffle our calendar around. There's a couple of things that can have an impact like that. But let's say 12 to 18 months is usually, like, if we and let's say that's something that I would talk to licensors about. Like we're negotiating, we're thinking about it, and then I'd say, like, from the moment we put ink on paper, we need 12 to 18 months to be able to deliver something. Now, that is for a full chapter. If we're talking about a collaboration that's purely cosmetics, we can usually squeeze it maybe a little shorter, but not much. Not that much. Yeah. The hardest thing is the killer power, of course, because every time we not only create a bespoke power that doesn't exist anywhere else, but it needs to sort of shake the meta. It needs to redefine a few things. And the problem is we've been more and more ambitious with the powers that we've created, with the details and the maps that we've created. And so every time we do more, and now that's the bar, right? We can't do less next time. We have to do even bigger and better. and our cadence is never slowing down.
That's got to be tough to balance on the gameplay side and the licensing side, because there's a new Saw movie. Do you want to return old cosmetics? Do you want to touch something up? Do you want to bring a character back or
Yep.
bring something new in? That has to be the balance, I would imagine.
Yeah, but I mean, not every time, but yeah, it's oftentimes it's a good opportunity, let's say, right? The new Alien movie coming out, Romulus. It was super fun, by the way. I don't know if you've seen it.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. I liked that they went back to the sort of original horror movie of the very first. Anyway, it was interesting for us to be able to release Rain at the same time and have a few other things, because obviously the movie comes out, so it's top of mind for people, and it's a good opportunity, and why not use it, right? Especially if there's new content like this, so people will be happy to see the new character that they now enjoy in the game and things like that. Yeah.
Are there times where you've got the opportunity to revisit a license, either things are expiring or being renewed, or like those new contents coming up? Because I'm often surprised by like Michael Myers has multiple masks throughout his tenure, and the burned mask was so iconic for the most recent trilogy. Not yet in the game, or not in the game. Revisiting that license or cosmetic element, is that something you can do?
It really depends. It really depends, because it depends what the license is, and those things, like, none of them are simple. Sometimes you have a license that's for one of the movies or the TV show, or one version of this that was seen somewhere, or sometimes it's all of it. We don't care, we own all of it, just do whatever you want. Sometimes also they say you only can do things that were seen in the movie in that specific way. And sometimes they're like, you know what? If you want to do the blighted outfit or the winter masquerade outfit, whatever you want, we're okay with it. Just make it really, really cool. So it depends on the license.
How often do you, in your role, revisit the opportunity, or say, hey, DBD's now at this level of success, would it make sense to go back and add something? Because down the rabbit hole I've gone.
Yeah, the average is 2 years. So most contracts we have is 1 to 3 years, and then we renegotiate, and then we renew. Sometimes it's very simple. We just go, oh, we still do this, and they go, yeah, and we go, yeah, okay, and then we still do this. And sometimes it's I mean, the license may have changed hands. It might be a new group. Maybe they have a game coming out. Maybe there's other things. The other thing also is the game is changing. Things like 2v8, for instance, or the introduction of the licensed archive tracks and things like that have forced us to pick up the phone and go, by the way, this is a new thing in the game. Would you like to be included in this? This is what it means, though, for your character. Like, for instance, 2v8 is pretty significant, right? Because for the first time, 2 killers will be seen side by side in the same map. That's not a simple thing for licensors, right? It's difficult to convince people that it's a good idea to have the Demogorgon right next to the Xenomorph, for instance.
I would have to imagine, and I wonder if I maybe I'm revisiting an old question, but going back to that well of, are they more open to it now than they might have been 6 years ago?
It's a different conversation. I'm not saying it's simpler. It's just a different conversation. The game has changed quite a lot. We obviously have more appeal, if you will, than we had 7 years ago, or even just 3-4 years ago. But the situation is different, and sometimes it doesn't make things simpler. So
a complex license like Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, you guys have a version. There are other versions out there. Is there pursuit for those other versions, or is it no, we're lucky to get this, we've got this, we're good?
Again, very difficult for me to go into specifics on this.
I see.
But what I can say is, usually when you have a character or a universe or an IP, let's say an intellectual property from something, if there exists a different version of it that is owned by someone else, it's going to be extremely difficult to have both of them overlap or be present in the same thing, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but for the most part, they'll try to keep it separated.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder how much, or if you rather could comment on characters that have existed in Dead by Daylight, but then make their way to their own games. In my mind, Leatherface, Texas
Yep.
Chainsaw, it's another asymmetrical game. And then you have Myers, who's showing up in his own game from Retro
Yep.
Realms 2D, but then also COD, Fortnite, and other places. Can you just comment on the idea of like they're in other multiple spots?
They're very rarely exclusivity clauses in these things. We wouldn't want one anyway, and I don't think it would be necessarily beneficial for them. Like, it's fine. The fact that Michael Myers appears in other properties takes nothing away from the Michael Myers that we have in our game and the way people interact with it. Yeah, if anything, it makes them more relevant. So yeah, there's absolutely no issue there.
How about a Leatherface, where it's another asymmetrical horror style game? Not the same, but different.
No, I'd say that the fact that there's another asymmetrical multiplayer game out there is more a cause for at least rapt attention, if not concerned, than the fact that it is Leatherface or anything else, right? Anytime there's another activity that potentially might take the attention away from Dead by Daylight. I mean, players have such, like, I'm a gamer, and I feel very lucky that I live in an era where there are so many awesome games released every day. Like, literally, we have more choices every day on what we could play than any other time. As a developer, it is scary and it is frustrating because you release a new game and you're one of the, I don't know, 700 games that have been released this year. Oh, this week. I mean, it used to be this year. Now it's this week, right? It is a saturated market. It makes it extremely difficult to keep people's attention or even get it in the first place. That's not going to stop us, but the challenge is there. And any day there could be a Dead by Daylight killer, if you will, like a new game that, even if it's not an asymmetrical multiplayer, but most likely it would have to be. Fortunately, it is exceedingly difficult to make an asymmetrical multiplayer game. I'm not saying that we were good and we figured everything out, but we got lucky, right? And we found a recipe that really works, and we've been clever enough to continue to tweak it into something that people continue to find entertaining and fun. We've seen a lot of games try it, with a few twists here and there, which is great. I mean, again, as a gamer, I find it absolutely exhilarating. As a scholar of video games, as a whole medium, I also find it fascinating that 10 years ago, asymmetrical games was not part of the lexicon. Nobody talked about asymmetrical games. Like, you could describe something, like people talked about Evolve that came out just before we released, but it wasn't part of the language of gamers. Like, some journalists may have used that as a term to describe a mechanic, but that was it. Today, it is as common as FPS or roguelite. It is asymmetrical, and people know what you mean. And there are examples, but Dead by Daylight's the only one that managed to stay relevant over time.
I wonder. I sometimes wonder why that is, because I see fun franchises like Clowns and Predator and come out, and it's like, that's so cool, and yet Dead by Daylight persists.
That's the thing, right? And we've seen them happen, and we will always sort of give them room to a certain extent. Like, I remember when I was the producer way back when on Dead by Daylight, and Friday the 13th released, right? And we said, oh, let's not do any content drop this week. Let's just
Mhm.
give them a space to be. I think we did something similar when Leatherface released. But anyway, the point was it is competition, but it's also like if someone releases an awesome game and it takes people away from Dead by Daylight, there's nothing we can do about that, right?
Mhm.
All we can do is continue to make this the best game we can make it, and
Mhm.
continue to listen to people and try to give them what they want.
Mhm. As far as what they want, and
Yeah, I was
you
gonna say the hardest thing is you give them what they want, not what they're asking for.
that perfectly lines up with my next question. Some of those characters that they're asking for have been difficult to nail down
Yeah.
for a number of reasons, and I'm curious if makes in some cases it makes more sense to craft and create your own original character uh, when
Yeah.
you've got a character like Pennywise or Jason on the sidelines that people are asking for. Does it make sense to create your own as an homage to that character, or wait and persevere for the license?
With those specific examples, I don't see a world where I get a chance to put Pennywise in the game and I don't take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, yeah, same with Jason. They've got a
Mm-hmm.
standing invitation. They have had it for years.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a way to make it happen, we'll make it happen. And that's not because we have, let's say, the Trapper is a big guy with a mask and a big lump of metal on his hand. It's it's very much an homage to Jason already, and
Mm-hmm.
yet it's not a problem. We had the hillbilly, and then Leatherface came in, and that was never a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Our original chapters, I mean, we have a clown. It's not Pennywise, but we have a clown.
Mm-hmm.
If Pennywise wants in, it's not going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that over the years we've been maybe more careful to create original chapters that are farther from existing iconic characters.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, horror is mostly built around very universal themes, so some stuff is going to be overlapping.
Mm-hmm. We're I mentioned Pennywise and Jason, but I'm sure there are others.
There's
Um,
you ask any sample of people what's their top 10, and there's quite a lot of common ground there,
mhm,
especially on the top 3 or 4 for sure.
mhm.
But now that we've announced Five Nights at Freddy, I think that that list has changed a little bit. But
I'm
yeah,
sure. I was gonna say that's the thing. Like as soon as they get this one, all right. Well, then where's Art the Clown? Where's
yeah,
this?
that's it.
You know, which I think is probably a good thing. If they weren't asking, they weren't loving and excited.
It's all passion. It's the same with people screaming at us, telling us, even in a hostile way. I call it. I like to think of it as passion. And to a
Hmm.
certain extent, if they weren't bitching about Dead by Daylight, they'd be bitching about a different game. And I'd
Hmm.
much rather they complain about Dead by Daylight.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Um, have you ever been close on those standing invitations for any of those franchises?
I
Ones
would
we
really
mentioned and
like
otherwise?
to not answer that question.
Fair. Fair enough. It wasn't meant to be baited, but
Oh no,
I
no, I know. I absolutely know, and you are doing your job very well of asking these questions, and I'm doing everything I can not to answer
fair enough. Then allow me
them.
to switch gears before I dance
Sure.
by accident backwards into the wrong thing. Um, I played and enjoyed the casting of Frank Stone for
Okay.
any other things, but I loved it as an expansion to the DBD universe, and I thought that was especially interesting in and of itself to explore the entity and such. But I was surprised it didn't launch as somebody who because I got into Dead by
Yep.
Daylight, then I was like casting of Frank Stone, let's go. There were no carryover characters at the time, and I'm curious, what are the logistics involved in creating adjacent games, given that, like, could Frank Stone or one of the survivors show up?
They could for sure. Without going into too much detail, it's our IP, and we own the IP. Like these
Mhm,
characters are part of the Dead by Daylight universe, and we could potentially put them in Dead by Daylight if we wanted to.
mhm,
Now, the idea with this was to create a game that would give an opportunity to people who might not play Dead by Daylight to
Mhm.
dig a little deeper into the lore and understand a little more. Also, just to make a really good game, even if you don't know Dead by Daylight, I think it
Mhm.
stands on its own, and that was kind of the point, right? It's part of the mandate that we gave Supermassive in this. They knew how to make a good narrative single player experience, and we sort of let them have free reign and do it the way they thought they should be doing it.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's the same sort of thing we did with Hooked on You, right? Where we
Mhm.
wanted to have a different perspective on our characters, on our universe. Hooked on You is a bit more out there, but it was still a really interesting moment when we could just say, you know what, you're
Yeah.
experts at what you do. Do your thing. We'll stay here and I'll help you make sure that it is DBD and that it's true to what we believe the game is. But
Mhm.
for the rest, do your thing.
Is it with the timeline for licenses? You said it's 18 months, sometimes as short as a year. For something that you own, Frank Stone or something, is it a shorter, longer? Do
No,
you have to link the
no.
visions?
Even the originals take about a year to create.
Mhm.
It's really the killer power, the perks. These things are extremely delicate. The balance of the game. I mean, we call it the balance of the game. It's not balance; it's chaos. But it
Mhm.
is sort of an organized chaos that needs to continue to twirl in a way that doesn't. There's a bit of an equilibrium. I think is probably a closer word than balance.
Mhm. All right, fair enough. I again, this is a non-shameless plug here. One of my students, hello Isaac, he absolutely loves the Blight. And
Okay.
when I was talking to him about Frank Stone and casting Frank Stone and how it was in the world, I think his mind ran rampant with the idea of like, could we have a game exploring one of the original characters? Blight was his choice, to similar to Frank Stone, where you're exploring that world.
It was one of the ideas that were kicked around when we decided to do Frank Stone. Not the plague specifically, but like,
Hmm.
should this be a origin story for one of our characters?
Hmm.
The same way we've done with the comic book. I don't know if you've seen the comic book run that Titan Comics
I
released, but
haven't. Oh,
okay. So there's a comic book run. It's an origin story for the Legion.
dope.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that was yet another medium where we decided to, try something different and tell more of the story of Dead by Daylight. Because, I mean, funny enough, at its core, when we released the game, there was very little. There was very little room for the narrative, right? It was all in
Mhm.
the flavor text or the description of the offerings and the items. There was no space in the game for the story to be told. It was all in the environment with that black smoke and the sort of fingers coming to grab you,
Mhm.
all these things. And as we started to give more room for that narrative, we realized that not only is it super fun to be able to tell that story, but people, a certain group of people, a subgroup, a subset of our community was hungry for that story, for that narrative that we were
Mhm.
creating. So we wanted to, and still to this day, we try to find different ways for people to experience and piece together the little bits of the story, right?
Mhm.
Same way that right now we're working with Blumhouse and Atomic Monster on
Mhm.
a hopefully soon to be seen movie.
Mhm. I I find it interesting because again, the idea of like learning about the entity and such was so fascinating to me as a lore buff. But then one of the things about horror is it's at its best when you don't see what's
Yeah.
going on. You don't know. That's got to be a tough balance for you guys.
Well, yes and no. It's sort of a habit that we've taken that whenever we answer something, which is rarely,
Mhm.
we try to make sure that we add a couple more questions without an answer, right?
Mm.
So there's always something that you're going to wonder about. The other thing that I absolutely love as a narrative device is we present you a character who is, to all intents and purposes, an expert, a
Mhm.
Vittorio, or there's a couple of characters in our lore that know, or they're they're meant to be experts on the lore, on the entity, on all of this, and they speak with certainty about things, and they
Mhm.
give out facts about how the world works, why the entity, why the realm is the way it is. But that's it. These are the words of a person, and we never tell you if they're right or wrong, and they could be very wrong. That's I find it a very interesting narrative device that we use quite often, so that we can give you hard data and then come back 2 months later with another part of the story that contradicts it in a way that you go, he was wrong, he had misunderstood this bit or whatever. And it makes it that you never have certainty, which is absolutely great.
Fair. No, that makes good sense, and it's exciting for me for sure when I just think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
I pinged out on socials that we get a chance to chat, and of course, hundreds of replies with any number of things. I'm sure you've seen them before, but I did pluck and tweak a few of them that I thought were fascinating. One of them was that, and again, I rabbit holed on DBD, the graphics update from a few years ago, something that live service games occasionally do to stay relevant. And I'm curious how you know when it's time for a graphics update, when it's the right time to put resources into that.
Yeah, that's a large question. And we've done the Realm Beyond. We've done that, and it is an everyday question and an everyday conversation within the team for sure, right? It's wonderful to keep saying this game's 10 years old, so awesome, and then you go, oh shit, this game's 10 years old. It's tough, but at the same time, if you do a big graphics update, for instance, or just even an engine update or whatever you do, by definition, you're going to cut a part of the community out. You're going to tell that guy, sorry, your machine can't run it anymore. Or you're going to tell people, okay, you have a 64 gig download to do before you can play tonight. Jeez, like there's all of these questions that make it so that you have to be careful about the way you do it. But every day that passes, the sort of pressure increases to do that. So yeah, I don't have a definitive answer to that one, but I can say that it is a daily concern on the team.
I often wonder the same because I look at games right now, big franchises that are still making titles for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And it's like that hardware is so old and the tech moves so fast. If it's a daily concern, I'm wondering, like, what's the ROI or the return of investment on adding animations to older characters or mouth movements or something like that? It's got to be daunting.
It's tough. And that's the thing, right? Because we do that with the maps, we do that with the characters, we do that with the Moris, we do that with the outfits. Everything that we do now, 8 years later, is of such higher quality, higher detail, higher fidelity, whatever you call it. The animations are more polished, they look better. There's the characters have voice lines, they have facial like all of this. And you're like, should we just go back and redo the Trapper and the Rate and all of this? I don't have the answer to that one. And we keep going back and adding a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but we have a finite number of people on the team and a finite number of hours in a day. When the choice is, do we make a new chapter that's going to be mind-blowingly awesome, or do we do a okay chapter but put a lot of effort in redoing the Trapper? It's a tough choice, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it's tough. It's a tough choice.
It's tough, absolutely.
I'm glad that I'm not the producer on the team anymore, because I don't have to make those really hard decisions anymore.
I can imagine. We're gonna go lightning round here, so I don't take too much more of your time. I am curious. Any idea or thought process in like classic characters, Wolfman, Frankenstein, Mummy, showing up as either killers or more homages? I know there are a few in there, Wolfman and such, but
yeah, the I think it's Universal that has the they call it the
Universal Collection is what it's in my
Yeah,
mind. I don't know if
something
that's
like
right.
that. Like the Mummy and the Wolfman and the Black Lagoon creature, and there's a
Mhm.
couple like that. Uh, they're interesting. Uh, they're interesting for people who are more scholarly in their approach or
Mhm.
older, which I'm both. Uh, they tend to be a little less sexy for younger generation or people who are I don't know, have a different approach, which is probably a bigger part of our community. The other
Mhm.
thing also is, let's say, a vampire. I mean, a vampire is cool, but if you have a choice between making a vampire or Dracula from Castlevania,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Makes
we're
sense.
gonna do Castlevania,
Yeah.
and we've had a couple of those moments when you're like, yeah, like Wolfman is cool, it's true, and we don't have a Wolfman.
Mhm.
Same with the Mummy, we don't have a mummy. The Plague is probably the closest thing we have, but she's not a mummy.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's appeal there, there's interest, but I think it's more as an inspiration for original chapters.
Makes sense. Fair enough. I am curious, rather, I should say, several people on socials were asking questions akin to the idea of how do you balance rewarding longtime players that are, max prestige and stuff versus bringing in new with new licenses or new originals and such.
Again, that's a question that is so difficult to answer, and that's sort of the bane of any live service game, right?
Hmm.
If you launch Dead by Daylight for the first time ever today with nobody to guide you through it, it's a little overwhelming. There's so
Hmm.
many things everywhere. There's the store, and then there's this and that, and so many characters, and you're like, where do I even start? Uh, but at the same time, for players who play every day for the last 5 years, you need to continue to give them more, and they are comfortable in that complexity and that rich place that we've created. So it's a delicate balance, and that's a huge demand on our UX and UI team. So that's the user interface and the user
Hmm.
experience team, the people who design the menus and how the flow of the game works and how you get to where you want to go. It's a difficult job, but it's a specific expertise for anybody out there who wants to get into video games. That's a thing that rarely people think of at
Hmm.
first, but it is such an interesting discipline.
Yeah, I would have to imagine, especially with in-game economies and the like, for
Yeah,
sure. Uh, One of the other things that was asked, what's the impact of things like Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or any of your subscription
awesome.
service a
It is
benefit?
awesome for the most part, I'd say, because your game gets into more hands.
Hmm.
Even if people don't have necessarily the same initial commitment, like when you pay $20 for a game, you sort of feel the incentive to play a little more, maybe give it a bit of a shot. When you pay nothing for the game, you're like, uninstall.
Hmm.
But overall, it puts your game into more hands, and by default, then it's yours to fail, right? At that
Hmm.
point, if you don't keep their interest, it's your fault. So yeah, I think that overall it's a great thing. Also, as a gamer, I absolutely love those things.
Hmm. I same. Did you feel the impact when the game went into those services?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's an influx of new players for sure. I mean, they don't all stay, but many
Hmm.
do.
That's good to hear. Interesting. You mentioned the movie. Considering the Fallout TV show's success, how much more challenging would a Dead by Daylight miniseries be to create licenses or original characters or both or whatnot? Would that be
I,
harder than a movie, you think, or easier?
I don't know. I don't make movies. I don't make TV shows. That's not my experience. I watch, like I've been put in contact with people who make that, and
Hmm.
I find it fascinating and educational. And
Hmm.
I don't understand a lot of the obstacles that are in the way. That
Hmm.
why is it not done yet? Uh, but No, I think that these are two different mediums
Hmm.
that are differently suited to tell stories. I think, especially nowadays, there's very little difference really fundamentally between TV shows and movies. Especially there's a couple of TV shows that do like an hour and a half episode, and then there's it's like it really, there's a blurry line there. For me, it's really about whatever we decide to do, it needs to be good, especially because it's going to be the first one that we do. And if we, let's say we do a movie and we screw it up and then we do a great TV show, most people won't even look at it because we screwed it up. Actually, it's probably going to be almost impossible to get a TV show done if the movie was bad, right? So whatever we do, it needs to be great. And, and it needs to open the door to, I mean, there's so many stories we could tell with Dead by Daylight. So,
well, as somebody who's in it now, I'm very much hoping that you get to tell more of those stories. Mathieu, I want to thank you for your time today, for the work that you and your team do, and open the door. Is there anything that you would like to share with listeners, tease, plug, anything before you head back to the fog?
I wish I could, but the thing I will say is upcoming now. I think it's November 26th. Dragula, the Boulet Brothers Dragula episode. I think they already announced it, so I can talk about it. But I'm going to be a guest judge. They put their last 4 contestants on the stage with Dead by Daylight inspired performances. It was absolutely a blast to go and play with them and watch them do their thing. And I'm very proud of that collaboration. So I can't wait for people to see that. And if I have last words to tell, it's always going to be the same, right? It's thank you, essentially. It's so much gratitude for people to give us their attention and to give us their support and their passion and allow us to continue to do what we love on a daily basis. So yeah.
Fantastic, man. Well, I thank you for your time. Stick around for just a moment.
Okay, sure.
And to every listener, I just want to thank you all for listening to this interview. And if you enjoyed it, consider liking, subscribing, possibly supporting the channel. And in general, just enjoy gaming. That's going to be it for us. Take care, guys.
Thanks again. Cheers.